A very good evening to you. A very good evening, viewers. I am Dr. Ketoki Dotto. Here I am with you because there is an invitation from Shakespeare Society of East India. The secretary, Professor Dr. Noina De, invited me to talk on a very popular topic, yet a very, very tricky one so far as the students are concerned. And this video is made for the students only under the aegis of Shakespeare Society of East India for the program Shakespeare the Whole Year. So as a part of that, I am going to talk about Macbeth's soliloquies, a mirror held up to his soul. My thanks to Dr. Noina De and Shakespeare Society know no bounds. So now I am going to talk about soliloquies in Macbeth. What is a soliloquy? Soliloquy comes from the word in Latin solus, means alone. Loqui means talking privately. So soliloquy is talking to one's own self. That is when we speak with ourselves alone, far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, behind all eyes, just standing eye in front of eye. Then that is soliloquy. When we are talking to ourselves, I is talking to I, then that is soliloquy. Now, what is the difference between soliloquy and aside? This is said that the scholars say that soliloquy is a bit longer than aside. Asides are usually very small, very short in length. What is a monologue? We all know. Monologue and soliloquy are a bit different, because in case of soliloquy, especially when it is in a drama, the audience is present. In case of monologue, the audience may not be present. Only one person accompanying the speaker may be there. For example, in the dramatic monologue, which came much later in the Victorian era of Robert Browning, who was the father of dramatic monologue. Now, let us talk about soliloquy. James E. Harsh, who is a professor at University of Wisconsin, Madison, USA, he wrote an authentic book in which he said that the first requirement of soliloquy is there must not be another character listening to the speaker. And he also said that soliloquies may be three types. One is audience addressed soliloquy, self-addressed soliloquy, and interior monologue. In case of audience address soliloquy, the character who is uttering the soliloquy knows quite well that he is speaking to the audience and nobody else is privy to his speech. Self-addressed soliloquy, when he has forgotten about the audience, however the audience is still present there, but he is talking to himself intensely. In case of interior monologue, he talks whatever comes to his mind. He does not, he does not sift anything, any thoughts, but he blabs out whatever comes to his mind instantaneously. Now, these are basically the three types of soliloquies James E. Harsh has been talking about. But there are so far as the scholars are concerned, they have divided soliloquy into four categories. One is plain soliloquy. Second one is attendee, somebody's attended soliloquy. Number three is soliloquy with props. Number four is dialogizing soliloquy. Now, dialogical soliloquy. Now, what are the four types? Let me just explain hurriedly, because we don't have much time to elaborate about these four types. Plain soliloquy is very simple, when the character is speaking to himself, knowing full well that there is the audience listening to his soliloquy. That is self-addressed or plain soliloquy. And this attended soliloquy is he doesn't know, or the character does not know that there is another person privy to his speech. Perhaps he or she is eavesdropping. Maybe take ourselves to that particular speech where Juliet was saying, where art thou, Romeo? And Romeo came to the balcony, just behind the balcony. From behind the balcony, he was eavesdropping Juliet's speech. Juliet was not at all aware of the fact that Romeo had been present there. So this is attended soliloquy. When somebody is listening to the speaker. Okay. Now, number three is soliloquy with props. When, for example, in Macbeth, I'll be talking about that in detail, however. In Macbeth, a dagger comes to the front of his eyes. He looks at the dagger. Actually, the dagger is not present there. There is that is only the heat oppressed imagination which which figures out a dagger in front, but otherwise there is no dagger. This is a prop which induces the soliloquy of Macbeth, and Macbeth blurts out whatever comes to his mind. Okay, now what is dialogical? That is, there is a dialogue induced soliloquy. In this case, the character is soliloquizing, but some other thing is there which makes the presence of another character mandatory. For example, when Hal is in King Henry IV, Hal is reading out the letter from a nobleman who is declining to join Percy's retinue to rise in rebellion. He is writing the letter and Hal is reading out. When Hal is reading out, then Hal is present there on the stage, and that man who has written, the nobleman who has written the letter, is also present on the stage. So here there is a dialogue which is being created. The character Hal is reading out whose letter? The nobleman's letter. So a dialogue. This man is reading out the letter of the nobleman. So he is just reaching the words of the nobleman to us. It might have been his soliloquy, but this is not his soliloquy. Though he is soliloquizing, he is reading out a letter. So this is dialogical soliloquy. Anyway, now we are coming to Macbeth. How is it that a soliloquy brings out the inner workings of the mind of a character who speaks out to himself, knowing full well that there is the audience privy to his speech? This happens only when the character feels very perturbed within. He feels that he needs to discuss something with himself. He thinks that at least this word should come out from within to make him feel lighter, a bit happier. Not happier, a bit happy. So for that reason, It might have been possible if there had been a narrator, but in case of the play, there is no narrator. So automatically, the character has to speak out for himself to the audience, and that is soliloquy. In case of Macbeth, we find 7 soliloquies on 7 different occasions, and as Macbeth was driven by a vaulting ambition, all these soliloquies point to only one thing, that is whether his dream was about to come true, whether the witch's prediction, which had been that he would be the king of Scotland, consequently, whether it will come true or not. He was just weighing the pros and cons of his actions, of chalking out a design to kill Banquo, to kill Macduff's family, in order to make the road to the throne easier, devoid of all thorns. Was it right? And then lastly, he was thinking that he was simply a person who would never be killed by any man born of woman's womb. Was it something which was just taken for granted by him from the predictions of witches, or did he begin to believe that from within? So that also comes to the fore. From the very beginning, the fear psychology, the ambition, the ambitious attitude, all these things are leading to wrong actions one after another. So let us see how the soliloquies are bringing out the inner workings of not just the mind, but it is holding up a mirror to Macbeth's soul, which was degrading with each passing day, wading through the sanguinary path to the throne of Scotland. So let us just see and read out a few lines if possible, and let us see how Duncan was killed, how that was made possible, and after the murder, heinous murder of Duncan, how the heinous murder of Duncan was simply being thought and chalked out by Macbeth, and how it was perpetrated. So let us just go through these soliloquies. Okay, the first soliloquy. When the witches came, and witches predicted that Macbeth will consequently, in the long run, would become the King of Scotland, how Macbeth reacted to it. Let us just take a look at the lines, and then we will come to understand, come to explain the lines. If not in detail, of course, in a nutshell, we will, because the time may not permit us to discuss the lines in detail, but at least we will get a feel of the soliloquy, and eventually we will try to trace the trajectory of Macbeth and understand how his soul was oppressed by these actions. Let us go through it. The first one is from Act 1, Scene 2, Act 1, Scene 3, where Macbeth is weighing the pros and cons of the predictions of the 3 witches. 2 truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. I thank you, gentlemen. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success? Commencing in a truth, I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated hurt knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Now, the thrust on the lines which I need to explain comes. Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. When we fear something presently, and if we imagine something which is very horrible, if we compare the two, then the present fears are less than horrible imaginings. The horrible imaginings, the mind-blowing, nightmarish imaginings may simply blow our top, may simply throw us to the edge of destruction from within, and we do not know how very fatal it can be as an influence on the mind, on the soul, to be precise. My thought whose murder yet is but fantastical shakes so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise. I am thinking of murder, but still that murder is in an imaginary form. It is fantastical, it is imaginary. But I cannot put anything into action as of now, because all my actions are being smothered by conjectures, assumptions, surmise, and nothing is but what is not. So whatever does not exist perhaps should be taken as nothing. This is the first soliloquy, and in the very first soliloquy we understand that Macbeth's calm of mind is devastated, calm of mind is ruffled, and he's thinking whether to translate the thought into action or not. Now, in this soliloquy, there is a surmise, there is a conjecture, there is an imagination, and he's thinking whether to translate the thought into action. But in the subsequent soliloquies, let us see what happens. Next one is Scene 7. By then, King Duncan had come to the castle of Inverness. Lady Macbeth was prodding Macbeth to gather all courage in order to take the knife up and stab Duncan when he falls asleep. Now, this is a heinous act which had been conjectured by Lady Macbeth and which Macbeth was trying to put into reality. So this here he weighs the pros and cons of murdering Duncan. Can he murder him as a host? Can he murder him as a kinsman? Because both go against all norms of civility, all norms of trust. He cannot do so. So let us see what Macbeth soliloquizes. If it were done when it is done, then it were well. If it were done quickly, if the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his Cersei's success, that but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all. Here, but here, upon this bank and shoal of time, we would jump the life to come. But in these cases, we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions, which being taught return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. Conscience is still awake. For Macbeth, conscience has not been murdered into smithereens. No, it is still working. And so Macbeth is saying that he is here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides this, Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels. Duncan was a man above board. Duncan was a very good friend of Macbeth. Duncan was a king, but yet he was down to earth. He loved Macbeth. He was promoted from Thane of Glamis to Thane of Godor. Automatically, because of his virtues, he was loved by all, respected by all. So in that case, if he stood murdered, then automatically hell would be let loose in Scotland. And again, as a king's man, as a host, Macbeth would never commit this heinous deed. At least he could not believe himself taking the knife and stabbing King Duncan. So I have no power to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other. He himself confesses that I have nothing but vaulting ambition. Vaulting ambition, which calls for the murder of a person above board, must be shunned. That very thought must be shunned. But Macbeth cannot do so. Let us see in the third soliloquy what he says. The third soliloquy is Act 2, Scene 1, the dagger scene, as I told you already when I was talking about soliloquy with a prop. You see, he says, "Go, bid thy mistress when my..." He is just passing on instruction to his servant. "Go, bid thy mistress when my drink is ready, she strike upon the bell, get thee to bed." Exeunt servant. Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. I have thee not, yet I see thee still. So automatically he was thinking about the dagger which he would clutch in his hand, and he would put ruthlessly into the torso of Duncan, so that he may put an end to his life. What does he say? He says, "Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain? I see thee yet, in form as palpable as this which now I draw." He draws. He unsheathes the scimitar. And he says, "There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. I see thee still, and on thy blade and dudgeon gouts of blood, which was not so before." So you see, fear, ambition, and at last the perpetration of the heinous deed, all are happening together. And now the imagination is taking a shape in front of his eyes in the form of a dagger, which he will take, and the action will be done. Now the concluding lines of this soliloquy are as follows. "Whiles I threat, he lives. Words to the heat of deeds too cold breath gives. A bell rings, I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for it is a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell." So, just look at the sanguinary path he chooses. This path is just a pool of blood through which Macbeth will wade to his success. He will be ascending the throne as he thinks he would do. Now, let us go to the fourth one. The fourth one is from Act 3. Just a minute. No, this is Act 4. Act 4. We come to Scene 3, I think. Yes, Scene 3. There Macbeth says that, what for have I no, this is Scene 2. I'm very sorry to mislead you. This is Act 3, Act 4, Scene 2. Yes. No, Act 4, Scene 1. There, Macbeth says, "Time, thou anticipatest my dread exploits." No, before that I've left one, I think. It would come in Act 3. Just a minute. Yes. Where he says that, "Why have I murdered Duncan? If I become the king," now you see, he is just thinking about his forebear, about his progeny who will follow him to the throne. He wishes his progeny, his offsprings, to ascend the throne as well after him. He would not pave the way of success for the children of Banquo as had been predicted by the witches. But just imagine, if the prediction comes to be true for Macbeth himself, it may come true for Banquo as well. And as the witches predicted that the children of Banquo would ascend the throne after Macbeth, and for ages it will run, for generations after generations, the progeny of Banquo, the offsprings of Banquo, the children and grandchildren of Banquo would become the subsequent kings of Scotland. So if one prediction comes to be true, why not another prediction in case of Banquo come to be true? Now let us see what Macbeth says. Macbeth says that to be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. It is much he dares, and to that dauntless temper of his mind he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valour to act in safety. No. When first they put the name of king upon me, and bade them speak to him, then prophet-like they hailed him, that is Banquo, father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, and put a barren sceptre in my gripe, thence to be ranged with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding. So no son of mine succeeding. That really makes Macbeth sad, and Macbeth thinks that the throne should be kept safe for his own progeny, his offsprings, not Banquo's. So you see, he was thinking of being the king himself. Now he was thinking of fortifying the throne for his own successors. Ambition for himself was just flowing down as an ambition to be handed on to the next generation, to the following generation subsequently. This is really something too unexpected of Macbeth, of anyone. First he should be the king, and then he should think about his own offsprings to be king, whether they would be worthy of being a king or not. That should be taken into account. However, in this soliloquy we find that Macbeth's vaulting ambition takes a big leap, and he's sad to think that the prediction of the witches in case of Banquo should not come to be true. If it comes to be true, it should come to be true in case of himself only. Now that is really irony of it. Now, Act 5, Scene 3, the sixth soliloquy, where we find Macbeth is saying that he should not be afraid of anything because he knows that he cannot be killed by anyone born of a woman's womb. Bring me no more reports, let them fly all, till Barnum would remove to Dunsinane. I cannot taint with fear. What's the boy Malcolm? Was he not born of woman? The spirits that know all mortal consequences have pronounced me thus. Fear not, Macbeth. No man that's born of woman shall ever have power upon thee. So this soliloquy is not a gratifying one. This sounds like a hollow imagining which secures him from within, which fortifies him from within, but actually that is a wrong sense of being secured or feeling secure. That is nothing but an imagination. In his imagination, he thinks that this prediction of the witches will come true, but he does not understand that God has some other design, or the providence has some other design. And now the last soliloquy is too philosophical, where he comes to listen to the death of Lady Macbeth, and here Shakespeare sounds too philosophical through Macbeth. He's soliloquizing, but he's saying about the ultimate truth of existence. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets upon his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So, when we come to the end of our discussion, we find that Macbeth's soliloquies are nothing but holding a mirror up to his soul, where he can see the images of himself being reflected, where the soul understands that Macbeth is rushing towards his eternal damnation with each passing moment. Moment does not stop for anyone, but the ultimate reality is, if we do good, good will come back to us. If we think evil, then only evil will keep happening in front of us, around us, in us, within us. So, Macbeth's soliloquies, no doubt, hold up a mirror up to his soul. And Shakespeare brilliantly pens the soliloquies not just to be recited by the character Macbeth alone, but we can also recite all these 7 soliloquies and remind us of the possible degeneration of Macbeth, and thus make us take a vow to do good only and keep all evil thoughts at bay, even if the vaulting ambition is involved. Thank you, dear students, for your patient hearing. And look at the diction, look at the rhyming pattern, and you will understand how the inner workings of the mind of Macbeth come to the fore and decide the fate of Macbeth ultimately. Thank you so much. I must thank Dr. Nayanade and Shakespeare Society of East India once again for according me this opportunity. Thank you very much.